Welcome and thanks for joining us. I'm John Hanak, the Chief Innovation and Corporate Officer here at the University of Oklahoma. Welcome to our town hall meeting today to talk about the Office of Innovation and Corporate Partnerships. I'd like to first thank everybody here at Zero Hall, as well as the Center for Faculty Excellence for all the great help in putting this together, as well as Don Kent from our office, who's been instrumental. The Office of Innovation and Corporate Partnerships is a relatively new organization. It's been in existence for about 2 years. We report to the Vice President of Research and have basically 3 functions. So the way we put our plan together, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in terms of the strategies that we support, but there's basically 3 verticals within the OICP. The Corporate Relations and Economic Development function, which is headed up by Joyce Burge, the Office of Technology Development, which is headed up by Andrew Pollock. And then the third piece, the third vertical, is venture development. I'm actually going to spend a little bit of time today talking a little bit more about that, because that's kind of the key to what we're trying to do is we enhance the university's ability to move technologies into the marketplace. So we have responsibility out of our office for Norman, the Health Science Center, and as well as the Tulsa campuses. And again, we consist of Office of Technology Commercialization, Corporate Relations, and Venture Development. So I did mention the strategies. There's really 3 strategies that we support. The Lead on University strategy, which is the all-encompassing strategy for the university. The VPRP in Norman has the 5 verticals. We're also in support of that strategy, and then the recently released Health Science Center strategy. So we're very busy doing all that. We have what I guess you could consider to be a strategy of our own, but with 3 over kind of umbrella strategies we've taken to call ours a plan. I am just going to talk about our 3 imperatives. Which is what we build the strategy on. One is to ensure that the volume of disclosures, patents, trademarks, and copyrights are tracking Tier 1 research institution levels. That all has to do with the volume of innovation here on campus. We've done a lot of work out of the Office of Technology Commercialization to simplify that process. And in fact, I'd like to think that today you can go online to disclose any discovery and you find it to be much easier. In fact, we encourage people to do that, whether or not they think they own the intellectual property or the university owns the intellectual property. We like to work with them, make that determination, do it jointly. I'm a firm believer that we need to keep the researcher at the center of everything that we do. So you'll find that you're very much a part of that process when we go through the disclosure. The second strategic imperative is to create clear pathways to commercialization. And we're doing that with startups, partnerships, economic development. There's a variety of ways to get to the market. As with most research institutions, probably the most traditional and the highest volume of that pathway is the traditional industrial licensing. But we're also looking to provide more support into the startup world as well as corporate partnerships to find ways to get our technologies into the market. So when you think about it, the work that you do in terms of research and making discoveries, you're driven by a lot of very different motives in doing that. Some of it's just simply to further the research. Some of it's to actually have an impact on society. Again, there's a variety of reasons, but we really want to be able to remove barriers when it comes to moving that into the marketplace, because that's how we impact society nowadays. Then the third and very much related imperative is to create and maintain world-class capabilities in moving those technologies from the bench to the marketplace, and that's what we call our venture development vertical. So what is it that we do? Well, you already heard me use the words barrier removal. When you really get down to what is it that we're doing, everybody needs help in getting barriers removed to moving these technologies into the marketplace, whether it's something as big as venture capital funding or whether it's something as seemingly minor as different barriers that you have to go through, even within the university structure, which is traditional and expected, but we're here to help guide people through that process. So our philosophy is that we need to be able to guide those researchers, innovators, and founders to clearly articulate the value of their ideas. And I really don't mean this as a criticism, but everybody I've worked with over the years is typically brilliant in their field. And they can articulate the value of the science, they can articulate the value of the technology, but they seem to sometimes have difficulty in articulating the value of the business. And that's kind of a different articulation. So we think that many ideas stumble before they fly simply because they're not articulated in the language of the business proposition. And so there's a certain process we follow to do that. And we really want to work with all the founders. So when I say founders, I mean innovators, I mean researchers, whoever has that driving desire to move a technology into the marketplace. But I really like to work them towards what I call mastery. And mastery is their ability to articulate that value as a business proposition. Again, because that is today the way to get to the market and the way to impact society. So because of that, and this is from CatBase, which is an online platform, we find that your pitch is more important than your deck. So what do I mean by that? It means that your actual getting up, talking about the idea, and in essence, selling it is more important than the substance of your deck. I've tried to help people render a 100-slide deck into 10 slides so that they can clearly articulate quickly what the value is. Efficiency is the name of the game. We don't want people to ramble, and we want to we put a lot of emphasis on things like a competitive matrix, and then also just the flexibility of the presenter. So how do we do that? So the program I want to talk about this morning is called Innovation Pathway. And this is something that basically takes a lot of these elements of this articulation process and couples it both with a business planning feature as well as a capital strategy development feature to enable people to drive these things towards the market. And actually, that's a good point, because one of the things I also believe is that the researcher, which we believe we need to keep in the center of this process, whether it's from disclosure all the way to licensing or startup, has to be the person that stays with this movement of the discovery farther than perhaps they've traditionally been thinking of this. Meaning, there is no fence over which you can throw a technology and the university will catch it and suddenly, miraculously, it will end up in market. Instead, there has to be a process that we guide these researchers through that, and they stay with it probably longer than maybe they initially thought. But the odds are very strong, whether you're going to commercialize through a startup or through licensing, that you, as the researcher, knows who the licensee will be. You actually know who some of your corporate partners might be. You may not know them as that today, but that's usually our best source of finding those connections as we move the technology forward. So, what's Innovation Pathway? Well, it's the process by which we help people articulate the value of their business proposition. And we use a variety of visual tools to help people do that articulation and view their discovery through a market lens. Importantly, we've recently changed that into a 3-phase process. So I used to run this as one kind of event, if you will. So you would go through a 6-week ideation process, and then you would that would have a piece of the business planning, and then I'd do a 2 or 3 day workshop after that, and everybody would go through the entire process. I've changed that. I've separated the three components. So today, when you and I'm encouraging everybody to get more information, you can see the link there, as well as to apply for IPATH if you have an idea. It does not have to be disclosed yet, but a discovery that you wanted to make a determination as to how long you want to stay with it. I encourage you to apply, and all you'll be applying for initially is this phase one ideation process. So that's that. I run that in either 6 or 9 week segments. Kind of depends on where the researchers are. And it's only a 1 hour commitment a week to go through the coaching session, along with an additional maybe 2 to 4 hours a week that you need to find time, kind of on a self-study basis to do the work. At the end of that period of time, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit in terms of what you learn, but basically, at the end of that 6-week period with ideation, you will have a very simple 10-slide deck and the ability to clearly articulate the value of the business proposition, knowing that you have within you the mastery of the scientific articulation. But again, we're trying to translate. This is translative in terms of going from the scientific to the business. The second piece of the process, which doesn't necessarily apply to anybody. So if you want to just go through ideation, that's great. But if you're thinking in terms of commercializing through a startup, I would then encourage you to apply to the second phase, which is business planning. And we provide an online platform through LivePlan, which is probably the world's premier platform for startup business planning. And there's no cost, by the way, to any of this. So we'll provide you a subscription to the planning platform, and then you'll get individualized coaching as you work through that. And then the third phase will be the workshop for capital development strategy. Those are workshops that I run. So you'll come to that with the ideation platform that you'll also get a subscriber to at our cost. You'll have the business planning platform, and then I'll work you through a process of identifying investors and preparing for investor pitches, and actually concluding that workshop with live investor pitches. So each of those are now individual phases, and there's no expectation that somebody goes through ideation that they may say, hey, I've learned enough to know I want to go the licensing route. Well, we'll take care of that with you, and we'll work with you through our OTC to work on the licensing side, and then you even go through the other two phases of the process. So who should do this? Well, startups trying to raise capital and scale their business, inventors trying to figure out their options to commercialize. And I think that's a really key point, because there's a lot of considerations that go into that. Yes, it's true that some of those are made by the university relative to the intellectual property that's been disclosed. But again, remember, the philosophy here is to keep the researcher at the center of this. So we want to work with you when it comes to figuring out the option to commercialize. And likewise, what's the best path forward for your discovery? You may have disclosed, you may not have disclosed, but what's the best path forward? We're ready to help you with that. It's for entrepreneurs with an idea to go to the market, and founders that want to meet local and regional investors. So one other kind of word that I think is worth talking about is we've also now aligned Innovation Pathway with the Growth Fund. So the Growth Fund is our dollars that are available to you as a researcher at the university for what I would call pre-commercialization work that you need to do to advance the idea to the point of being able to make a decision as to how best to go towards commercialization. So the Growth Fund is actually a grant organization, and we've now divided that into 2 phases. So the first one's market discovery. This is where you will reach out to customers, much in the I-Corp fashion, if you're familiar with that. But nowhere near that volume is required. We just want to make sure that you're tracking to what the market needs might be, and we have a variety of ways to do that. There's up to $5,000 available for that phase to help you work through it. Again, even before a company's formed or whatever. And then the second phase is the translational phase, and that has an award in the growth fund of up to $75,000, and that's to help you develop a minimally viable product or to otherwise develop a prototype, anything that's necessary to advance your research work into an application that we can then consider for commercialization. The best summary of that is to just say, don't hesitate to talk to us or to anybody in the OTC when it comes to understanding growth fund availability. So what do we do in iPath? Well, we do, there's elements of market validation. There's customer discovery. We talk about discovering the right investors. We talk about the components of a pitch, which I think is very important. We come to understand why investors say no. It's always the assumption that my baby's the prettiest baby ever, and everybody and anybody's going to want to invest in. But there's a variety of reasons that may have nothing to do with your innovation, but there's a variety of reasons why investors say no. We work on presenting skills. We work on identifying funding needs. And then we also talk about what investors look for. We get insights from entrepreneurs, and then we develop a business plan. What I want to highlight in that list is the identifying funding needs. And absent a detailed business plan, there is no way that you can have an idea or an invention and say, well, I need to raise 1.5 million. You need to develop your pathway as to why that's the case, and we can help you do that. So the way we schedule this, there's just kind of topically what we do in each phase on this slide. I won't go through the detail, but you can see ideation there. And then below each, those hyperlinks, which this will be available because we're recording, you can go to those hyperlinks and see exactly what the platform you'll be subscribed to, and you'll have access to that information for a year. This is what the schedule looks like when it does happen. The three phases, you can see, I'll just point out phase 2, the business plan development, is self-paced, and that goes up to a year. Self-paced, and I guess I would say customized coaching. So I'll personally end up probably being the person that works with you. We're looking to fill our venture development spot, so that would fall on that person. But in the meantime, it's really my job to work with you to help you understand what you need in that business plan. But I must warn you, I am deemed a killjoy when it comes to business planning, and my wife's the one that titled me with that, because once many years ago she wanted to start a business, and I said, "That's great. Let's put a plan together." She said, "You've already taken all the fun out of it." But you got to know the numbers. The numbers are critically important. I actually have a quote. I don't think it's in this presentation, from no less than Mr. Wonderful, the guy from Shark Tank, about how you must know your numbers. So you won't even listen to anybody unless they do.
Are they kind of made up then?
The question was, aren't the numbers made up though? Or that was actually a statement. It wasn't a question. But yeah, like anything, they are. But they're based on they're based on logic and a set of assumptions. And I have business plans that typically go through a dozen or 24 iterations, each with a separate set of assumptions, which are important to track. So anyways, go to our website for more information, ou.edu/OICP. There you can see my email down there. Contact me directly. We'll be happy to work with you. And again, I want to thank all of you for being here.